Sometimes DUI cases have to go to trial, and when they do, they're in front of a jury. When it comes to picking a jury, each side has to follow certain rules, but one of the questions that all potential jurors are asked is, what do they do? And so from a defense attorney's perspective, we have done many trials, and we've worked with other attorneys, and we've gone to what are called CLEs, which are continuing legal education programs. And over the course of many thousands of trials from many, many defense attorneys, we have gotten this down to a little bit of a narrowed kind of a science. Who do you want on your jury to give you the best odds of winning your case? And there are many different factors that we look at. Occupation is only one of them. And so today we're going to be talking about some occupations that may or may not be good for your jury if you've been charged with a DUI and you're taking your case to trial. And like I said, this is not something that is my list exclusively. This is something that I've talked about with other attorneys in my office and all throughout Arizona and actually throughout the entire country, going through different programs that defense attorneys go to in our spare time. And so we're going to talk through this. Now, it's not an exact science, so these are not 100% accurate all the time, but in general, this is kind of how we like to distinguish between different jurors. So let's take a quick look. In the middle of the whiteboard here, I have a column of different occupations that we're going to cover in this video. On the left-hand side, I have yes. So if I move that person over into that column, we're going to want them on the jury. If we do not want them, we're going to label them under here under the no column. So let's run through these one by one. The first occupation that we are going to cover is the writer. Do we want a writer on the jury or not? According to a lot of different defense attorneys, we want them on. We want them on the jury panel. Writers tend to be a little bit more liberal. They're people who are a little bit more creative, and in general, we get better responses from writers. What about psychics? Psychics, we do not want on the jury. There's a reason why they're psychics, is they are communicating with other people in other dimensions or on the other side, or they can read somebody's mind. And so in general, when we've had psychics on juries, we do not want them on there. The kind of common census is they are already predicting and believing that they know what the outcome of the case is going to be, and so we want to keep them off the jury. Similarly, journalists, yes, we want them on there. Very similar to writers. Journalists tend to be a younger demographic. They tend to be people who are a little bit more liberal. They've got a lot of life experience. They've seen a lot of difficulties. They're out there kind of in the field. They're working with a lot of people from a cross-section of society, and so generally they tend to be a little bit more liberal, and we want them on the jury. The next one's pretty obvious. Do you want a substance abuse counselor on your jury in a DUI case? Probably not. And so anybody who is in that particular field, people who are substance abuse counselors or sometimes even AA people who are in Alcoholics Anonymous, a lot of the times what they want to do is punish people so that they can then get them into treatment. They want to convict somebody so that they can then go through the 12-step program or go through Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or actually go and hire them and get that treatment they need. And they think that if they are going to be pleading not guilty on a particular case, that person's not going to get the help that they need. So that one's pretty obvious. You don't want them on there. Defense attorneys, or attorneys who generally defend against things that are the status quo, so people who are going against big entities like the government or big corporations, you tend to want those people on your jury if you can get them on there. Some other lawyers, of course, you do not want on there. So things like prosecutors or anybody who's working kind of in a regulatory function, people who are working for the government, you tend not to want them on there. But defense lawyers, and that little triangle there is for defense. Anybody in that particular kind of subsection of lawyers, you want them on the jury. Next, we're going to get to athletes. Athletic directors, do we want them on a jury? Probably not. The reason why is athletic directors, they want their athletes, their teams, to be free from alcohol. They want them to be at tip-top shape, high performers, and so they do not want them to be drinking, and particularly drinking and driving or committing crimes. And so they tend to be a little bit more harsh in the community's consensus. So across a wide kind of swath of lawyers, athletic directors, get them off the jury. Athletes, by comparison, you want them on the jury. So athletes are kind of the exact opposite of an athletic director. You want them over on the jury. Athletes are younger demographic. They tend to celebrate. They tend to drink. They tend to kind of have a bit more of a youthful lifestyle when they're out there having parties and celebrating and enjoying time with their other athletes and their friends. And so you want them on the jury. They're going to be a little bit more forgiving. They're going to be a little bit more understanding of what happened in your particular case. And so if you can, you want them on the jury. Nurses, you can probably guess you do not want them on a jury. Nurses, especially those working in hospitals, especially those treating people, can tend to be a little bit more harsh on how they view these types of cases. And there's good reason for that. They see a lot of the accidents. If somebody's hit by somebody in an accident and there was alcohol involved, that nurse is going to see that person come into the ER. And so they may have sort of a more guttural reaction to these types of charges, and they can be a little bit more harsh on it and kind of be of the mindset that they need to convict an individual in a case right now. Otherwise, this person can go back out, and if they do this again, they could potentially kill somebody. So nurses, we do not want them on there. Drivers, people who drive around for a living a lot, people who are on the road all the time, they tend to be better jurors. We tend to want them on the jury because they understand a little bit more about the realities of the road. They are on the road frequently. They know, or they tend to be kind of picked on by the police. They're stopped a lot. These people who are putting a lot of miles on their car, and so they're kind of they tend, just in our experience, to be a little bit more have a little bit more animosity against law enforcement and the police. And so you want them on your jury because they are going to be a little bit more inclined to lean in your favor. They're not going to be as trusting of law enforcement and prosecutors and the government because they've gotten too many tickets, in other words. The next one's an interesting one. So bartenders. Many people would think, hey, bartenders, they're around alcohol a lot. They see a lot of alcohol. They're part of that culture. Shouldn't we want them on the jury? Shouldn't they be somebody who's a little bit more lenient, a little bit more favorable to the person we're representing or to the individual on trial? Not really. Actually, bartenders who are under 35 tend not to make the best jurors. Essentially what they're doing is one of really two things. One, they're kind of overcompensating. So they're saying that they see a lot of this stuff, they don't like it, they serve the alcohol, but they think that other people should not be driving afterwards, and so they tend to be a little bit more harsh. But similarly, the younger crowd, especially the under 35 crowd, is quite judgmental. They like to judge people, and the other thing that they want to do is they want to say, well, why didn't that person get a designated driver, or specifically use an app on a phone, use an Uber, use a Lyft, use any one of these other technologies that is so readily available and that they use very frequently. So they may be a little bit more judgmental. And finally, we have professors. Some professors are more difficult than others, but most professors are around a lot of college students. They're around a lot of younger folk, and so they tend to be a little bit more liberal. A lot of them are sort of anti-establishment in a way because they are professors. They are part of the academics. They are in academia, and they are a little bit more liberal in their school of thought. So in our experience, this is how these different occupations should play out. As I said earlier, this is not an exact science. This is a very massive, broad generalization of all these occupations. We've had many cases where we've kind of gone one of these routes and categorized people according to these different trends, only to find out that the person who was acquitting or finding not guilty or any of those things was in the category who we would have bumped off. So it's just kind of a fun exercise that we go through. I'm not trying to stereotype or be overly judgmental on any of these things, but that's kind of how we do things. These notes came from a CLE that we've done along with some other notes that I've taken over the years. And so this is kind of how these are separated into different wants or do not wants. And so just an interesting kind of behind the scenes on how these things work, what lawyers are thinking about during a jury selection. So if you've been charged with DUI, if your case is going to trial, if you are interested in speaking with us to see what other strategies we can use in addition to considering the occupation in a jury, give our office a call. Happy to schedule a free case evaluation with you and make sure you have a plan to move forward. Thanks for watching.